think one other person might show.
Sorry?
Just let the viewing public know you can wait 5 minutes. Postpone meeting for 5.
Is there any guidance on that?
Madam Chair.
Yes, so before I call the meeting to order, I would like to ask that we give another 5 minutes for anyone walking in last minute. Thank you. The time is officially 6:06, and I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right from the airport?
Yep.
Should have flew the plane right over City Hall.
Just in time, being recorded as present.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and call the roll, please.
Hit the mic.
All right. Cartier Roland,
He called, he's not going to be attending.
Flanagan William. Freeling Nathan.
How do you know?
Gaffney is here. Giguere. Hall James. McDonald John.
Yes, here.
McDevitt Devitt William. Peasley Mike.
Here.
Kyle Van. Van Andeth.
Here.
A quorum is present. I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Did I say?
If I may, Kyle Van, I'm not sure that he's still on the commission, so maybe we can table that and discuss that offline.
You don't think he's on the commission anymore?
I don't believe so.
I wasn't aware that he'd been dropped. The quorum would be the same, we have one. The first, did you get a copy of the minutes?
I do not.
Or agenda,
I've got the agenda.
minutes?
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to act on the meeting minutes of May 9th. Do I have a motion?
Motion by Mr. Hall to approve. Second? Second from Mr. McDonald.
Motion to approve by Mr. Hall,
Second by Mr. McDonald.
second by Mr. McDonald. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hearing none.
Let's vote.
All right, under old business, veteran suicide prevention, is there anything to report on that?
So, with regard to that, forgive me again for missing last month's meeting, but in the interim, from then until now, I've been working on some things kind of behind the scenes. One of the things that I'd like to continue and actually gladly start tonight is to have a guest speaker come in for each meeting. I will be working on that as kind of an ongoing thing. As always, I'd love for the commission to continue to seek out organizations that aid and promote suicide prevention. Any fundraisers, anything that the commission hears about, whether it be in Lowell or nearby towns. I'd love for us to make more of a presence at some of those events. But as far as anything new, other than the guest speaker that I invited here today, nothing new on that.
All right, thank you. That's all we have on our old business agenda. We'll go to new business. Veterans of the Month, Mr. Gaffney, you provided an after-actions report?
The only thing I wanted to say is I thought the ceremony went very well. It was well attended. There were 6 nominees there were a total of 9 nominees that were ready to go, that have their bios submitted. 6 of them, including Mr. Gillis's family, attended. I think the ceremony, between the 9, I think we had a good span of service going back 50 years. The ones that were nominated included some of, I would consider, kind of the good representation of what would be, you would consider the old guard of the Lowell veterans community. There was another Cold War veteran who's done a lot for appreciation of Lowell history. So I thought we had a good representation. The 6 were well accommodated in the time allotted. There was plenty of time for their citations to be read, for them to respond, and some extemporaneous speaking. And it also allowed for a little socializing before they had to go into the city council. There was a little bit suspense and 11th hour scrambling involved here. Among the factors, there was a change of criteria, which was a good thing because it did allow us to bring some good nominees on board. But it also required a little scrambling at the end to get their nominees in and coordinate with them. And so I really didn't have much to do, but I was kind of on everybody's emails trail. So I saw how hard Andeth and Jim and Eric worked to put the thing together. And I also think the mayor's office, the mayor himself, Bill, and Jim Ostis did a lot of work at the last minute to put it together. I thought it went very well. In fact, I thought maybe just as we might send a note out to the mayor's office indicating that we appreciate their quick turnaround and their response. And that's.
I wanted to echo Mr. Gaffney's points that I think were excellent points. I felt we put a lot on Mr. Ostis to pull stuff off, and I felt guilty about that, but he didn't complain at all and met the mission. But on Mr. Gaffney's point, I think a good change, and I was mostly guilty of this, and he was nice not to bring it up. We had trouble getting some of the bios, so I think when you nominate someone, if we could have the bio in hand, it would avoid us taking advantage of people to get it through the Congresswoman's office or getting a proclamation if we had this stuff in hand a month before. And I also wanted to make one other suggestion. We had some great nominees, and I don't know if the board would think this is appropriate too. When we have 4 or 5 next time, I was thinking perhaps we could have a theme, and the first theme that I thought might be appropriate would be to have to highlight women veterans in our community. So we could have in the fall, say, 4 women nominees, and then have a similar type of event, but that would recognize that we have a lot of great women veterans, including our fellow commissioner, in the community, and I think it would also create a very special night where we could have other supporting casts there to speak about the contribution. But that's just something that I thought, how can we beat this night that we had? Because I agree with Mr. Gaffney, it was probably our best event yet, and I think that's potentially a way we could come close to it, but that's just my after-action report.
Good.
I certainly would second that. I am happy to and look forward to recognizing a woman veteran for the next meeting. I do have her bio ready to go, and she is just awaiting the official date, so I'm excited to recognize her. But great point that you bring up, and I would absolutely love to see more of a woman's presence at these ceremonies, so terrific, thank you.
And I have a few nominees to that effect, as you might have anticipated, but I just wanted to bring this up in case people had other obviously worthy candidates, that if we thought it was a good idea to have this sort of theme night, perhaps we'd have to hold off on other nominees, so I didn't want to do that unfairly.
Mr. Chairman, through the end of,
Good.
do we have two nominees who are men nominees that are ready to go, that have already been nominated?
The nominations that I submitted are ready to go, yes.
So we wouldn't postpone them, would?
If we don't have to, I don't see why we would.
Well, I mean, we could set this sort of thing up. I don't know how to, I guess, discuss it, but if we were going to have a gender-specific quarter, we probably wouldn't be able to have the other nominees. Were they already voted on and approved?
Yes, they were.
All right, then we can hold off on this idea maybe till winter quarter.
That's perfectly reasonable. I think the whole process has, we've added a bit of formality to it in definition, and so as we go forward, we're refining that. And just from my perspective, I think that's a great idea. I like the idea that it draws in other ancillary supportive events, and it kind of becomes an event in and of itself.
But you know,
And it's certainly we're, even if we're out a quarter or 6 months, we're going to be in a position 6 months from now where we'll be looking for nominees. So it'll come faster than we all hope it will, for sure.
Wondering if we could have this sort of event in Women's History Month. That might be the most.
That's kind of where I was thinking in the back, is maybe we can line them up with some of the other stuff. So, and if that's your program, and offline, you can contact the resources you need and bring it to the meeting on how we want to go forward with that. And before is there any other discussion on this topic? No, this has been good feedback. Before we move on, I just did want to recognize Ms. LaMarche for all the work that he did to get that taken care of. To the other commissioners for the work that Mr. Gaffney alluded to, the email trail that was going around between meetings. There's a lot of work that goes into that event, and it's all behind the scenes. We appreciate the work that he did, and we certainly appreciate the support that the mayor's office gave us and the city hall in general. I think you're right, Mr. Gaffney. I think this one deserves some response to those people, those parties that are not on the commission, but we owe them a due of gratitude, and we'll make sure we follow up with a written response. All right. If there's no other discussion on that, and I thank everybody for their input and for the great ideas from Mr. Hall as well. We have a guest speaker this evening, and Edith, I'll let you address that and introduce our speaker.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. I am very happy to invite to the podium tonight our guest speaker, very proud fellow Army veteran, he's Army, I'm Air Force, but nonetheless a fellow veteran as well as a good friend of mine. Glenn Lacker is his name, and he was a sergeant in the Army, and I felt that it was very fitting for him to speak tonight because I feel that he has a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I asked him in particular to speak on the PTSD issue, and I'll let him have the floor and introduce himself, and welcome and thank you.
Army leads the way.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Gentlemen and ladies of the panel, I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me as a guest speaker. Just before I get into it, I'll give you guys, sorry, this is like really close. Again, a little bit of background around me. I did 8 years in the U.S. Army. I was a airborne military police NCO, non-commissioned officer. I was a staff sergeant, so I'm originally from California, and they decided to send me to Alaska, my first tour. But I got to do a lot of things that I enjoyed about the Army, and got to meet a lot of new friends. Jumping out of airplanes, going to the field. I was basically utilized as an airborne infantryman because they needed military police to assist them wherever they went. So after training, we deployed to Afghanistan and got to see a good part of the world. It made me realize how good we have it over here. A lot of people don't realize that, which, I can't blame them because they haven't seen the other side. But I did experience a lot of combat over there, and because of that, I've seen a lot of my friends go down certain roads that, not that I would go down, but, I've seen a lot of them hit the bottle. Stuff deals with them because, you guys know that we are conditioned to, obey orders, do stuff for our country, and us young kids, at that time, we are very excited to do that for our country. But as far as the PTSD stuff, I've just seen too many friends go down the wrong roads. And I actually had a friend call me last night. One of his buddies, I don't know this third-party person, but one of his buddies took his life. And they deployed together after my deployment with him. So now, it's kind of like, it hits home for me because now I have to worry about my friend because, I don't, it's just one of those, I think I don't want to get too technical, but, it's like a mental scar because, there are things that we saw that we're never going to get back. And we can't really discuss with somebody that can't relate. And I feel that, and I know this has been always ongoing because ever since, any war, like World War I, wars before that, they just called it a different name. shell shock or anything like that. They just, I do believe they are doing a better job now kind of assessing what it is, but to be honest, you can, PTSD you can have from, anything. As long as there's a post-traumatic, not even related to the military, but as long as it's a post-traumatic event in your life, it could happen. But I just want to bring more awareness to it because I know us younger generation, I actually, a couple months ago, I became a member at the VFW, and the only way I was pushed to that was because my friend was like, man, you should. It's only $30 a year, and it's a good place to go hang out with other veterans like you to kind of, relieve stress, and you talk about the war stories, and, it gets everyone laughing. But when I asked the president, I was like, I looked at him and I said, I'm probably the youngest member, and I'm 28. I'm probably the youngest member of your VFW, right? He's like, you are. And I feel like our generation, and I'm not taking it away from any of the other generations that fought wars, because, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. But now that it's more aware that we are, that this is a serious issue, because I don't think the military does a good job, or at least civilian organizations can't coordinate as well with, okay, so if I'm a civilian doctor, I can't relate to this combat soldier because I've never been in that situation. And, I just got out, honestly, I did 8 years, I was staff sergeant, I just got out this past March. And I was kind of pissed on how they do it. I mean, they say, yeah, we send you to these classes, build your resume, but it was like, thanks for your service, now we got this other, 18-year-old kid that's ready to, go do missions for country, God and country. But, with me, it affects everybody differently. Like me, I go to the gym, like I can handle things very well. But when I see my friends, it's like a complete opposite. And I think that's the biggest issue, because people take things differently, and then, they soak it in, or, they let it, as I used to say, you can't let the terrorists win, so they dwell on your fear, and I feel like most of the veterans that have seen that side of war or anything really, they dwell on that, and it's become a problem to where, and I'm not trying to push anything towards out to the VA, because I know they've done very good job, but us soldiers, we're told can't show weakness, stuff like that. And my friends, come out of the military, and they think the same mentality. I'm a hard charger, which is great. We want that, but we all see behind the curtain of, listen, you could be a hard charger up until something triggers your whatever you have, anxiety or PTSD, and my generation has too much pride to go seek help, because it's just like either it takes too long, or it's just like, what, I don't need it, or I don't want to be put on pills, I'm not a danger, stuff like that. And I don't like the fact how if you say PTSD, it's automatically a negative connotation to that person, because that is, you don't know what that person's been through or what they deal with. Some of us are good jugglers, handling life, which, is great. And, there's a lot, like me, I bring a lot of experience. But I can multitask pretty well, and I have a lot of things, that I like doing, stuff like that. But the biggest thing for me is just to bring more awareness. I feel like it'll be like communication. You can never be a master of communication. There's always something that you will miss, or that other person doesn't get. And I feel like that's what this whole dilemma of PTSD, like, it's only going to get, there's going to be another thing that comes out, and we're 10 steps behind, and it's kind of like one of those, it's hard to deal with, because everyone has, I think differently than you, and than this person, and but I think that's just the biggest thing, that bringing more and more awareness to this, because us kids, we joined as kids, we came out as men, and that I think that's kind of, terrible that it's just like, all right, the VA will deal with you, and then you have to figure it out. And that's kind of hard for us because, like, for me, did 8 years. It was kind of difficult for the first 2 months coming in, trying to figure out what a civilian job was. I didn't know what holiday pay was, stuff like that. It's something as simple as that. Even like paychecks, like you get first on the 15th no matter what. No matter, you work 1 million hours this month, but oh well, you get the 1st and 15th, whatever your rank is. But that's why I think there's a lot of things that add on to stressors for us veterans that may or may not have those PTSD, problems or anxiety. So that's kind of like my take on it. I get kind of because this is a thing for me on my heart, especially seeing my friends go through it because there's I believe 22 veteran deaths a day, stuff like that, and that's 22 too many. So that's just my little spiel, sir.
Yeah, appreciate that, and thank you for coming in this evening and sharing those thoughts. That's I think when we started the speaker series or inviting people to come to the commission meetings, the idea was that we could highlight issues that are important,
right,
and that we get behind. And this one is one that that certainly hits home with probably every one of the commissioners and yourself. Right. And so again, thank you. I'll just open up to the floor for comments to address Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, Glenn, I want to thank you for bringing up the issue. It's something that I'm part of an organization called Veterans Assisting Veterans. Eric LaMarche is on that board as well. It's a nonprofit that we've dealt with many different veterans and many issues, one of them being post-traumatic stress and trying to come up with an effective program. It's nice that you've come in, give some perspective from a younger generation, but PTSD is something that affects across all generations of veterans. The number one veteran demographic that suffers most from PTSD and commits the most suicides is actually our Vietnam veterans, because they're coming out of the workforce and a lot of time on their hands. And reason I brought up Veterans Assisting Veterans is because there is a resource for your friends, and I want to make you aware of, there's an organization out in Andover called Ironstone Farm, and they have a specific program for veterans that helps them with PTSD through equine therapy. There's no drugs,
right,
not at the bottom of a bottle of alcohol. It's all natural sources, and it's something that I've seen work. I don't know why it works, but it's free. Certainly let your friends know that, to contact Ironstone Farm. Again, they're in Andover, easy to find. They have a website, and just call up, and it's free of charge. It's also free of charge to first responders, police, firefighters, EMT, corrections officers as well, who are affected by post-traumatic stress disorder. So just wanted to say that there are resources out there, make you aware. So this is part of what we're trying to do. We try to do with the Veterans Commission is to create awareness out in the community of the resources that are available and talk about these issues. So thank you for coming in.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say the second.
Gaffney?
As far as awareness is concerned, I think your talk contained a lot of insights, and I think you do a good job getting the message out. So I think you should be encouraged to get it out to other people when you get the chance. You're a good speaker.
Yeah. Thank you for your service.
Thanks for your support.
Anybody else? Mr. Hall?
I thought this was a great idea. Thanks so much for coming in.
Appreciate it.
Please keep doing it.
I try.
No other than to thank you again, Glenn. Happy to have you and proud to call you a fellow veteran and good friend. I told him he couldn't let me down, so he kept his word. So I'm kidding. But no, I knew that he would be a great speaker to have, and so I didn't put much thought into it at all, and I was thrilled when he said he was willing to speak, and even on short notice, so I appreciate it, and I thank you.
All right, thank
If
you.
the commission will allow me one re-attack on that, I know I've already spoken, but one of the things that I thought was interesting that you brought up was your membership in the VFW, and there are a number of veterans organizations just like that, Legion, VFW, DAV, there are a ton of them out there, and I think they're often discounted by the younger generation. I count myself to be part of that, and I'm active in the Legion and the VFW as well, and thank you for highlighting that, and I think it's a venue that's underutilized these days. So
Very, and that was one of the things, one of my older buddies, he was an older Army guy, he was telling me, he's like, you know, we got to keep this going, because you younger guys need to keep this going, and it's just, I don't know where it went away from that, because to be honest, when I was getting out, I was not even thinking about just an organization like that, but even to, you know, it is cool to see, you know, older guys, like we have World War II, Vietnam guys, we all share stories or, you know, have a drink, and it's a good time, and it's a good stress reliever in a safe area. But yeah, that's one of the things. I still try to encourage my friends to do that, Legion or VFW, even if they don't even go. Like, it's just not even a lot, $30 a year for your membership. But that's one of the, you know, I'm not trying to hit exactly on what organization works, but definitely that's something that I like that I did that, because my buddy was saying, you need to keep it going. That's, you know, that's the main priority. So
15 years ago when I joined the VFW, I thought I was the youngest one, and I just realized now, 15 years later, that Eric was actually younger than me at the time.
Mr. Gaffney, did you want to say something?
During our last Veteran of the Month ceremony, one of the honorees named Joe Dusso grabbed a little time at the microphone for himself and spoke about the necessity for younger veterans to join those organizations. So he would have been glad to hear of your interest.
okay,
You've done a good deed this evening. Thank you for coming in.
I
We
appreciate it. Well,
that.
thanks for having me. You know, it was good to talk to all you guys and everything.
You're most welcome anytime. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Glenn.
Thank you.
Well, I think that was a success, and I'd like to see that continue in the future meetings. So, yeah, we didn't mean you had to leave, though, but that's
Oh,
okay.
you can stay. One other thing on the new business, it's not on the agenda.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
We had talked earlier, before the meeting, it's been, last couple of years, we haven't had a July meeting because of everybody's schedule and vacation time and everything else. So I just wanted to at least throw it out there, whether or not we would have a July meeting.
I would, personally, I have the same experience in other organizations I belong to, and I think it's a tough month to get people to come together. Unless there's business that we need to address, I would be in favor of that. And I'll open up to the floor for other comments.
Motion to cancel the July meeting unless an emergency develops.
I'll second that
A
motion.
motion by Mr. Hall, a second by Mr. McDonald to forego the July meeting unless there's cause to call it to session. Does that sound accurate?
Yes.
All right. And any other discussion on this? No, I think everybody, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, anybody opposed to it? No. All right, so that motion carries. Any other new business to address? Go ahead, Mr. Gaffney.
Related to Mr. McDonald's motion, if I understood him correctly, without the July meeting, this may be his last meeting in front of the commission, and so he's been a very strong voice for veterans on the commission, and I think we should certainly thank him for his for the good things he's done during his service.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffney, for moving that to the floor. I'd like to echo that. And, John, I know I haven't been on the commission all that long in the grand scheme of things. I know you were here when it was conceived, as were other folks. And we've worked on a number of projects together, almost all entirely on veterans issues. We seem to keep crisscrossing, and that's a good thing. And the same people, many of the people in this room, we all do the same thing. Before I give it back to the floor, I just wanted to thank you for your service to the city, to the commission, and I know you're a dedicated individual to that, and I thank you for everything you've done. Thanks. I'll open it up if there's any other comments from the floor on that.
I'd echo that as well. I know, I really don't think there's anyone who's doing more than John to highlight the service of veterans right now, and I know I wouldn't be on the commission but for his repeated encouragement. I don't know if others experienced the same.
Some might call it badgering, Mr. Hall.
So I'd like to thank him as well. I know I'll see him around again, so.
Yeah, yeah.
I would just like to add that, yes, and you came on shortly after me, so I don't have all too much time or experience before you, Mike, but in my time here with the commission, John has been absolutely critical to, the success of the commission, and certainly deserves the recognition. We, are indebted to you for, for your time, your commitment, your service. We wish you the absolute best in your next endeavor. You seem to be doing very well with that, and it looks very promising for you. And so I'm sure many successes will come from that for you. We will be watching closely and supporting, of course. And maybe just to kindly ask that you stay close for us to, keep in contact.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
You don't mind if I say a couple
I
things?
was going to offer you the floor, John. Go ahead.
I just want to, first of all, say how proud I am of the work that this commission's done over the 3 years that I've been involved with it. I've seen it come to fruition with the help of a former mayor and Rodney Elliott, who was instrumental at the time of my prodding to try to get a Veterans Commission going. I felt that, and he felt that it was, we needed a place, a forum where we could discuss veteran issues that were important beyond just the important flag raisings and ceremonies. We needed a place where we could talk about veterans homelessness. We needed a place where we could talk about veteran health issues. We needed a place where we could talk about veterans in the workforce. And the grace of the Lowell City Council at the time, they found it in their infinite wisdom that we formed this commission, and we formed it. And I think that, Jim was one of the original members. Eric's been here all the way. Bill Flanagan and many others who participated at the beginning to get this off the ground, and we were able to do some pretty good things. We formed a veteran ID program that was very specific to Lowell veterans, and we were able to fund that, and now veterans can go to Eric's office and get an identification card if they were missing a card that identifies that they're a veteran from Lowell. We started a Lowell Veterans Business recognition program where businesses in Lowell could recognize veterans. We together started the Walter J. Bayless Jr. Veteran of the Month program. We have had guest speakers through the years to talk about various issues and the resources that are out there, and I think we've done some pretty good things for veterans, but most of all, we created a resource for veterans to come here on a monthly basis, whether they were seeking advice, whether they were seeking a resource, or they're just maybe watching on television in the general public. But what we have done through this commission, I think, is most of all, is that we've allowed Lowell to become a veteran-friendly and a veteran-proud city. And I think that that's what I'm most proud of, and as a collective group, what we've been able to accomplish together. And I know that watching this evolve and watching the different people that have been in charge of the commission, and I've always been a strong believer in allowing new voices, new people to participate and take leadership roles. And I think that's what makes commissions or board of directors, organizations great, is fresh blood and new faces and new perspective. And I'm extraordinarily happy to see this new leadership crew, and I wish you nothing but the best, and I'll be around. So thank you.
Thanks again. All right, VSO update.
I don't really have a whole lot, but I was a... I was approached 2 weeks ago by a family of a World War I veteran that he was killed in action. It was his 100th, the anniversary of his death, 100th anniversary was this past Friday. They requested something, just some kind of a, not really a big ceremony, but they wanted it private. That's why none of you really knew about it. They didn't want me to publicize it, but we put up a wreath, and I brought my electronic taps machine, and we did something. We did a little something for the family last Friday at 9:30 in the school across the street on High Street. All the students saw us gathering, so they came out and honored the veteran as well. And I'm assuming this is the time where we'll probably see a lot more of these. But the family wanted that specifically. They didn't want anybody involved. They just wanted it the family, and they wanted me to say a few words. But I did want you to know that did happen. I'm just working on the two upcoming dedications. The first one, the Gillis Square rededication. It's under the event section on July 21st. I'm just putting that ceremony together, and then again the following month for the Curry Square dedication. It looks like it'll be busy, and any others that come my way. Other than that, I will be out of my office for anybody that's listening until next Friday. We'll be back on next Friday. Anybody needs anything urgent, I have worked it out with the Chelmsford Veterans Agent, Regina Jackson, where she can take any applications or any emergent applications of any sort, and you can get a hold of her at the town hall in Chelmsford. Other than that, one in progress.
Eric,
Something to add.
oh, go ahead, Mr. Hall.
Eric and I did talk about an idea too that he suggested there's probably going to be a lot of the 100-year anniversary World War I recognitions, and we were discussing potentially having a veterans ball in the fall to highlight all those from World War I, where they could potentially be, put up on the wall, or there could be snippets about it, and perhaps we could raise funds for our quarterly event by selling tickets for that. Of course, we could invite some dignitaries, but I think it'd probably be well received. It would take a lot of work, but I think Eric had some ideas of how potentially to get a free hall to do that, or we could use the VFW or another place, but I think that'd be a big event for us to at least talk about in the August meeting.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of...
Go ahead, Mr. Gaffney.
Do we still have some kind of a nonprofit corporation?
There was one, but it wasn't for this. We haven't created one for this. There was talk about one that was going to be eliminated, being converted to this, but I think we would probably have to someone would have to create a nonprofit support organization. However, I do think another nonprofit, for example, could have a sectionalized funds that people could donate to that nonprofit to set aside for our organization. So
I know one. They're more than happy to do that.
So, for example, if we had this 100-year anniversary veteran ball, the tickets could be a voluntary contribution to nonprofit X, who would sectionalize the money for the quarterly veterans recognition event. But even if we're not raising money, I still think it would be a good event to, invite some dignitaries to, and, to honor the people who served in World War I in any capacity.
Good.
I love the idea. There's so many balls every year that for various things, but all of us being veterans and probably participating in a military ball and understand that it's can be quite a thing. And I think if we held some sort of annual ball, I'd say after Veterans Day, not to interfere with Veterans Day weekend events or anything, but somewhere between maybe the weekend after or the weekend after Thanksgiving, something that time frame. But I love the idea. And I think that every year you could, we held a military ball, we could honor a segment of veterans. World War I, for instance, like you say, the next year it'd be World War II, then the Korean vets, and on and on and on you could go, or if there was something significant to that effect. So I love your idea. I think it's a great one, and I'd like to lend my support in any way.
Thank you. As we're speaking, and my mind's kind of jogging for some, ideas and thoughts, to kind of piggyback on Glenn's topic that he brought up with regard to the younger generation of veterans having not that much of a presence in organizations like the VFW. I love this idea as well, and I think that might be something else that I'd like to work on, is to get more of kind of my generation of veterans out to a function like that we can introduce to, one of the older vets, or even having kind of a social. Aside from a ball, we could have a social where younger generation of vets can meet older generation of vets, and that might bring awareness and get more people to participate or become members of the VFW. I think that was a great point that he brought up. So we could maybe pitch it off with that, with the ball. So I love that idea. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, one other thing, I think that what would be good is that not every veterans organization is for every veteran, right? So if we had some sort of ball, albeit that maybe it's held at the VFW, but give other veterans organizations an opportunity to also showcase and create awareness for their group. Like NAM Vets, NAM Knights is a tremendous group. It brings people together. I think that the American Legions, the different American Legions that are out there, certainly is a place, and on we go. But I think that there's an opportunity to highlight all the groups, and I think that one of the things that I've experienced through this, participating in the Veterans Commission and getting really involved in the veterans community through the last 7 or 8 years, is that there's a lot of organizations out there, not enough people know about them. There's a lot of resources out there, not enough people know about them. And when you don't know, it might as well not exist. So I think that this is an opportunity to highlight all the organizations, allow them to participate, and give resources to the younger generation that's coming home looking for that sense of camaraderie.
All right, so anybody else? Did you want to speak, Mr. Flanagan?
Do you find many women veterans applying for assistance and help through your office?
I think there's a fair amount. I don't have the numbers, but there are a fair amount. The Department of Veterans Services has a great women's veterans network. And we have several veterans agents that are women. And there are a fair amount, especially what I see.
Are there many women veterans in Lowell?
Yes.
Are they active?
Yes. I mean,
Very smart, too.
they're very smart. He's talking about his wife. But there are, I mean, not really active. There aren't very many active younger veterans, period. The VFW has been, at least in Lowell, has been run by older veterans for the most part. I mean, I'm a former commander, but we were fortunate enough to have a younger veteran take over the commandership, Mr. Chris Golden, whom we honored last month. But I mean, they're far and few between. They don't go to the VFW. I mean, getting them to these organizations is the hard part.
I think my wife was a senior vice commander of the VFW when I was commander, believe it or not, so.
Now, just in my own personal involvement, this isn't a complaint or anything like that. In the 5 years that I've been involved in the Lowell Veterans Commission meetings, going to the American Legion meetings, going to the Great Lowell Veterans Council meetings, going to those functions, very, very rarely do I see any women at the meetings. Okay? the Great Lowell Veterans Council, those functions that are held, never see a woman representing at those meetings. At the Drake and American Legion, it's not a knock on them, never see a woman participate at the meeting. I don't know if it's because they're not welcomed into the meetings, or the women don't feel they can go to the meetings, but I never see any women participate in veterans meetings. I don't know if there's an active recruitment, or the women feel they should have their own separate veterans organizations. Is it something that the Lowell Veterans Council, Lowell Veterans Commission, excuse me, should actively pursue in the years to come, a program of trying to recruit women into this organization? Because I think we need a woman's point of view, not excluding you, but I think there are special needs that women have, women's veterans have, and I think we as a commission should be aware of that. Try to bring that interest to the forefront. I'm only talking about my perspective.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Ms. Flanagan. Edith, did you want to respond to that?
Yes, please. Thank you, Bill, for bringing that up. You do bring up a very good and valid point. Just from my own perspective and my thoughts on that, it could have something to do with a generational thing. And I feel that it applies for both men and women in my generation of veterans. Glenn touched on it a little bit about, too proud to seek help for, PTSD, not being as proud to display their service by even just wearing, Army hats or, Air Force shirts. I still see a great number of older veterans that still wear their Army hats, their jackets, their sweaters. The younger generation, you don't see that. I'm not sure where the disconnect is. I don't know if it's just a whole transition of time and how times evolve. Our society itself is continuously changing, and I don't know kind of where the shift took place. But there did come a time where there was some disconnect, and veterans, around my time and moving forward, don't show much of a display in their pride, having served. Certainly that doesn't go across the board. I'm not certainly generalizing, but for the most part, that's what I see. Now, with regard to women, I know for me, when I got out of the military, I dove into being a mom. Many of us are wives, and so certainly not to take from you gentlemen with your tasks and your duties and responsibilities, but as a mother, I know that my first priority was my children. And so when we come out of service, I think for the most part, a lot of us women concentrated on that. Only when my time allowed for me to take part, in extracurricular things or things involving the city, did I allow myself that freedom to do that. And that's why, that's hence why I'm here today, because my children are older, and mine are 18 and 19 now. And so I feel now would be a fitting time for me to get involved in organizations like this. I certainly can't speak on behalf of all women. I'm interested in knowing why also, but just from my very own perspective, which certainly doesn't validate all women's perspectives, it could just be that, again, going back to a generation, a transition in time, our society, and just women just being busy and being wives and being moms and career. We're more career oriented, so a lot of women are pursuing school, other careers, and maybe not have the time to commit to something like this. I know that I wouldn't want to unless I was able to fully commit. So that might be something as well.
Mr. McDonald?
Just real quick, one of the things that I've been told relative to other organizations that have tried, listened to the managers of VFWs, American Legions, and other organizations, is it is a bit of a life cycle issue you spoke to, which is, when people are younger and they're getting out and they're setting up their lives and they start to have kids and there's commitments at home. It's not like it was 50, 60 years ago where the mom took care of everything and the dad said, hey, I'm off to go get a drink, have a good night. Both parents participate, and it's not until, and I use myself as an example, I was a member of the VFW since I was 19 years old, and I didn't rarely went down there until I got into my mid-30s. My kids started to get a little older or whatever it was, and I was able to start to participate in things. So I think that's part of it, why we don't see the younger people, is because of all the commitments and the different things going on. I also do think it's awareness, but I just wanted to throw that in.
All right. We're running out of time for our allotment for tonight, and this is a worthy issue. I'm not trying to reel it in. We'll table this discussion. What I'd like to do is direct the clerk to do two things. One, we moved past the fall event before it was concluded, so I'd like you to add to the agenda a fall event committee so that we can pick that up in August. And I'd also like you to add to the agenda a Women's Veterans Initiative, and we'll continue this discussion.
This is for the August agenda.
Yes, sir. Well, it'll be a standing item, I would suspect.
And the second one was?
Fall committee, event committee, and Women's Veterans Initiative, so that we can, and I'm certain that in the next 2 months, there'll be a lot of offline discussion, so we'll come back to the floor with something more organized. All right, there are a number of communications and scheduled events which have been circulated. Those are reflected on the bottom of the agenda. We've got about just a few minutes if somebody needed to address any of those. Otherwise, we'll move to an adjournment. Anybody? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
From Mr. McDonald, how appropriate at his last meeting, and a second from Mr. Hall. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right.
Thank
you. The meeting is adjourned. Next meeting will be in August.
Excuse me?